Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Brian. We're going to do a special selection today, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's special selection comes at us from Robotin. I'd love a reaction to a 5-part suite by the band Motorpsycho from Norway. Been around since '91. This suite is from their 2020 album, The All Is One. It's called N.O.X, 5 parts. The 5 parts have the titles Circles Around the Sun Part 1, Ouroboros, Strange Loop, Ascension, Night of Pan, and Circles Around the Sun Part 2. Interestingly, when I checked this out on Rate Your Music, movements 1, 2, and 3 are listed as N.O.X 1, and movements 4 and 5 are listed as N.O.X 2. I'm kind of curious if maybe that's how they're split on the vinyl, because that would be right. Now it seems like it might. That'd be right around the time that we might have to flip sides. But maybe I'm also thinking that tracks 1, 2, and 3 smoothly transition into each other. There's a harsh break from 3 to 4, and then 4 and 5 move into each other. I'm not sure. Altogether, this suite is 52 minutes, which makes it, I think, the second extended request that we've had on the channel. I think it's enough of a preamble. Let's get into this. Since it's not an album review, I think for the most part I want to listen to the entire song all the way through, as we have done with every track that's been over 30 minutes. But there may be a point in there, if there is that clean break between movements 3 and 4, I may take that moment to discuss things a little bit. I'm just going to play it by ear, as usual with stuff like this. Let's dive into it. N.O.X 1, Circles Around the Sun. For some reason I wasn't expecting so much synth. Motorcycle, I'm thinking of, well, not that either. I'm thinking of metal, maybe rock. Really jazzy accents right here, though. Really nice light 4/4, bit back tempo. Beautifully haunting right here. Interesting phrasing. I'm trying to figure out if everything's on a 12-beat phrase or not. Yeah, I think we have a 3 against 4 thing going on here. 4 bars of 3 versus 3 bars of 4. it's interesting because it feels like this is supposed to be, I don't know, not negative, but there's like this overtone of impending doom. There's a darkness to it all. So you get some really jazzy melodies here. The note intervals. That one right there, it reminds me a lot of the way Haken develops their melodies. Very eclectic chords and modes for rock. Yeah, so that's where our 3 against 4 comes in. It's in 4/4, but we have a lot of dotted. Yeah, so it'd be dotted quarter notes going on. So if we've subdivided up into 8, it's every 3 beats. Even our cymbal. Group brings a 3 over there on the ride cymbal. The drummer pulling in some really cool polyrhythms. It's a really neat blend of like atmospheric driven writing with melodic writing. It never really chooses one or the other, it does both simultaneously. Really sick bass line through this section too. Oh man. Yeah, that's our riff for the next track. Yeah, a really nice 5 here. They do a really good job of disguising their time signatures though. Like, I can feel that we changed, but I didn't quite catch on to it as quick as I wanted to. I think it's because a lot of the time they're playing with double length. Like, this doesn't really feel strong as 5, but it's very clearly a 10. But like, if you listen to just the center channel, that fat bassy synth and the drums, it's just a one beat phrase over and over. There's no loop, there's no phrasing, there's no wider idea. You really have to listen to this guitar kind of chugging over here to get the time signature of it, because everyone else don't really care for it. They're just doing their own things. Moments like this, it moves into the realm of jam. Sometimes that works. Like minute 6 to 7.5 of the last movement. This one's not quite hitting me as strongly as the last time we did a jam session though. our rhythm section just still giving us that one beat idea. So we strip everything back. We continue with our chugging guitar, but we're going to build up a different idea on top of it. The expanded percussion is nice. In fact, the entire instrumentation of this track is different from our first movement. I'm curious if that's going to be a trend. Every song has their own sonic identity based on what instruments are in play. Something else that's interesting is that the first three movements are... No, that can't be right. I guess I said this was just 50 minutes long, but it looks like it's only 42. Anyways, our first three movements are 21 minutes long, and our second two movements are 21 minutes long. The break between movements 3 and 4 will be the exact midpoint of the suite. A bit of triumph, something we haven't had really much at all on this this track right here. It's a very harsh stop. Another neat parallel here is that our first two songs add up to 17 minutes, 17 and a half, and then there's this 3-minute interlude, and then we have a 15 and a half minute massive song, and then a 6-minute outro. It's big idea, small idea, big idea, small idea. love those trills. Hammer on pull off, actually. Same idea, just different execution, different instrument. Just taking a little bit of notes. Got the old dry erase marker. Mostly I'm trying to put some narrative information down, kind of chronicle what each of these songs is doing. Atmospherically, emotionally, see if I can tie it all together by the ends. So there's going to be a hard stop between 3 and 4. Wait, maybe? Yeah. We're going to keep it rolling though. I feel like it's supposed to be listened to as a whole. I do find it interesting also that this is mostly an instrumental suite. We had those highly digitized vocals in Movement 1, Circles Around the Sun Part 1, but otherwise, that 2 or 3 minute block with the vocals, we haven't had any other section with lyrics to it. The micro adjustments in the background. You know what's interesting is that this track, harmonically and atmospherically, shares a lot with Circles Around the Sun in that it has that sort of stealthy, we're gonna rob a bank kind of vibe. Heist music, that's what it is. Has a little heistiness to it. I don't think Circles Around the Sun Part 1 or this intro would be really great. That's not the only similarity it shares with Circles Around the Sun Part 1. So it has the very tight repetition of Movement 2 with the harmonic properties of Movement 1 and the use of vocals as well as the vocal texture they have going on here from Movement 1. I'm really hoping this slow burn is worth it. You know, it's interesting too is I get a little bit of later Anathema vibe in this, the heavy use of reverb and the echo, the delay, but the delay also providing harmonic resonance, building up these harmonies as the echoes come in, stacking the notes. It's just a fun sound. So I really love this section. It is a slow burn, but the way that we're moving between these emotions is like paint mixing and swirling. Just like the slow evolution of the chords. So good. I've been thinking about this title too. Night of Pan. Okay. Yeah. Still keeping that repetitive idea in the background on the piano. The bass adding into that with the little 16th note idea on beat 1. This one's getting a bit much for me. I thought we were going somewhere when the drums came in. We're still building though. It's interesting that as much as they enjoyed jamming on movements 1 and 2, they're distinctly choosing not to here. Like, this 2-beat idea is ripe for noodling over, and they are hesitant to do that in order for this atmosphere, environment to build the way that it does. They're still taking their time with building this out. It did come back just later than I was expecting. Oh, it's groupings of 5. Okay. Now they're in groupings of 4? It's really tough to make heads or tails of what's going on here. Of course. Incorporate the heavy repetition into the solo. kind of envious of the ability to write music like this. My brain would have forced me to change so many things a long time ago, and they can just stick with it and have this gradual growth and exploration. I mean, you know, it's not my jam, but I do appreciate the craft. See, this is groups of 3. Oh, now we're going to do the repeating. But these are groups of 4. How does that work? Groups of 5 are done 3 times. That's 30 beats. It has to be the 2-beat phrase that underpins everything. It just allows such flexibility. I really like that. A 7. Yep. You know what's really interesting too is I brought up Haken already, but it kind of does feel like Haken if they were a bit more psychedelic and a little less perfectionist. Just a little grittier than I think Haken would ever do. What was that, 13/8? I'm not even sure about the 13/8. I think it might even be shifted down to 16 on the bottom number. $25, $27 over 16. Just a funky time signature. Bringing this idea back in from the beginning of the suite. You know what it is? It's dark but uncaring. That's what this vibe is. That drummer, man. The heavy vibrato or whatever you would call it for a synth is just, it's killing me. There's also a 3 against 4 thing going on that we had in the first movement. Why? Oh, wait. I think I may have been premature in my why. No, maybe I wasn't. That was a journey. So I've been trying to form an idea about what the story might be since I don't have lyrics. And it seems the internet doesn't have lyrics either. I could find lyrics for the title track, which is also the opener of this album, The All Is One. But Metal Archives doesn't think this is metal, which is accurate. This is rock. Genius doesn't have any. Sonic Hits doesn't have any. General web searching doesn't show anything up either. So this discussion is going to be sans lyrics, which I honestly thought was going to be okay. The lyrics, at least at the halfway point, only took up 3 minutes of our opening 20. But the lyrics seem to pop up more and more in the back half of this suite. And I do feel that now that the song's over, they do play an important role in the understanding of the song. And I'm a little upset that nobody's posted them anywhere. Although I forgot to check Bandcamp. I think when we get done with the musical analysis, I will pause and see if they are on Bandcamp and if they put their lyrics there. I guess I should check for their website too. That's kind of hit and miss. Bands don't usually do that anymore. I feel like that's definitely something bands would do in the 90s, 2000s, Web 1.0 days, is have their own web page with lyrics and stuff there, and just doesn't seem as important anymore as having a Facebook page or a Twitter account. I think there's something lost there. Anyways, I'm not here to wax poetically about the old days of the web. We got to talk about N.O.X. I do find this to be an interesting writing style, whether it's something that's just relegated to this suite or it's just the way that they write. I'm kind of leaning towards the latter. It's it's definitely psychedelic. It draws a lot of influence from the progressive rock of old. Lots of emphasis on atmosphere, something that bands like Pink Floyd would contribute heavily to the style of prog rock or art rock, depending on how you look at their output, while also looking at bands like King Crimson and Yes, who used very wide sonic palettes, lots of different instrumentation and sounds in order to craft heavily layered and dense songs that explore things thoroughly and dynamically. But to me, there's also a mix of modern day prog as well. In fact, the most direct band that I've made connections to, and the one I think is still the strongest here, is Haken. The heavy use of time signature change ups, polyrhythmic and polymetric ideas, the unusual cadences and harmonic properties, the chord progressions, the note intervals. There's a lot of elements in here that remind me of Haken, especially once the vocals pop in. It really is more of the instrumental parts that feel like they belong or influenced from, not necessarily belong. The song is very modern sounding, but definitely influenced from prog and psychedelic of the 70s. The vocal work and the the vocals and the vocal melodies, they're modern, they're very Haken. And it finds the middle ground to marry these two. I think in some places it's a very strong combination, particularly the opener and closer, circles around the sun, and a little bit of Ouroboros. But Ascension and Night of Pan go in a very different direction and really hone in on the atmospheric driven psychedelic elements. In fact, even our second movement, yep, that was the singular jam as I wrote it, where we had one repeated idea on the bottom. So yeah, that's another, yeah, 2, 3, and 4 are very psychedelic, whereas 1 and 5 feel more prog rock. I do think 1 and 5 paired this well. There's still a psychedelic element under the lyrics, which brought more of the progressive elements to it. 2, 3, and 5, though, I think this is where we really need to talk about the very specific sound that they have going on here. Movement 3, Ascension, was only 3.5 minutes long, and it sort of acted as a way of winding down and wrapping up the ideas presented in our first two movements so that we could move on to Night of Pan, which I'll have to talk about separately. Now, movement 2 and movement 4. They decide that all they need is one underlying idea, and we'll explore that one idea for a very, very long time. But it's interesting how they went about it in two different ways, with movement 2 going for pretty much a really big jam section. They had multiple soloists, just really going through these lengthy solos. Some parts felt okay, driving forward with some sort of purpose and direction, and others felt a bit more meandering, which is just, I mean, that's improv. That's, I mean, whether you're at a jam band, another, rock outfit like this that just go into these jam components to it, or you're listening to jazz or anything else that incorporates improvisational elements, you're gonna have hit and misses, both between different performances from the same musician and during the same performance through multiple musicians. Sometimes a musician might start off strong and begin to meander at the end as they run out of ideas for that night, and maybe it's the other way, where it takes them a while to get into the groove of the evening. Maybe they had a rough day they're still trying to shake off, and it takes them a bit to get into it. That's what movement 2 feels like for me. There's some parts that I think work well and others that kind of don't. I think some of the ones that worked really well, I'm kind of misremembering. I think they came in at the end of movement 1, which also had some jam session. We're just going to play some highly repetitious stuff in the background and someone's going to solo over it. But movement 4 decides to go in a very different route and do the same thing, a singular background idea, foundational idea for the entire 15 minutes. But this is a big thing because it's just shy of being double of movement 2 and has a lot less to say, at least on the surface. Movement 4 decides to create that repetitive background sound and make that the focus without solos on top of it. We get a little hint of one at the end, but it quickly becomes just another background element as well. It was the piano that came in at the end. It's an interesting exploration of a concept. I think it's cool to listen to all of this and sort of see all of the different ways that the band crafts music, how they write melodies, how they create atmospheres, how they create rhythms and polyrhythms, how they can solo and jam out. And we see a bunch of combinations of these. Movement 1 has a little bit of jam and a little bit of prog and a little bit of psychedelic. Movement 2 is a really big jam session. Movement 3 is a transition piece primarily written from a prog rock standpoint. Movement 4 is just post-rock atmosphere stuff. It's the jam band without the jam. It's just the band. And it almost feels like an exercise in subverting expectations, although I can't, again, discredit the atmosphere that they build. I had a lot of positive words to say around the 3 or 4 minute mark about how the chords came in piecewise. We get one note, and then another note, and then another note, and then another note, and it alters the coloring of the chord as it's built, and I kind of likened it to paints sort of meeting and swirling together. As I said, it's not my cup of tea, but it's a really interesting exercise, and it's a fantastic display of their skill in this area of composition. And our final one returns back to the combination of all the ideas we have heard presented. From that standpoint, I think it's a fantastic introduction to the band, assuming that they do stuff like this often. You get to see a little piece of everything and specific combinations of different sounds that they do, including all of it together, which I think is honestly their biggest strength. My 2 favorite tracks on this, to no surprise, are the opening and closing, as they're the most diverse, they have the most amount of contrast, and they're the fullest, the most realized. They have direction and momentum, they have foundation and melody, they have counterpoint, they have polyrhythmic ideas, they play around with time. They're just exceptionally developed, and everything else feels Like, what if we did movement one, but without this piece, or without that piece, or without these two pieces, or doing just this? And it's about exploring a minimalism of this very full sound. So the very full sound is the one that's going to appeal to me most. But like I mentioned, I don't think that the rest of the tracks are without merit. There are some really neat ideas in there, and I also think that given it is psychedelic, which just isn't a genre, I think that holds up really well to this type of scrutiny and attention, would work better in another situation. Lights off, chilling in a beanbag or on a comfy chair, and, eyes closed, and just absorbing it emotionally rather than me trying to dig into what's changing when, especially with movement 4 Night of Pan, there isn't a lot of change to it. I do apologize a couple of times I did yawn in it. I don't mean any disrespect when I yawn during reactions, um, but yeah, I did notice. I don't think I yawned during any of the other ones, and that one just happened to be the least contrasty track. I yawned like twice during it. Um, but yeah, so just like on the surface level, what each track is doing, I do think this is really interesting having the, you know, everything at once and then piecemeal it. What about just this? What about just that? And then bringing it all back together at the end. Speaking about bringing it all back together, something I think this suite does really well, which I kind of wish more rock bands would take up this mantle, especially prog rock bands, especially any any prog band who is going to put a multi-track suite together, is motif. This is like a really important aspect to classical music, especially classical music that works within multiple movements. The idea of numbering this N.O.X 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, unless I'm misunderstanding this, is a direct callback to classical music with its multiple movements, utilizing Roman numerals to showcase how they're all connected. Any modern music that does this, I believe, is, copying this practice from classical music. I kind of wish they would also copy a bit of the composition. As usual, tools in a toolbox. You can absolutely write a 10-track suite and have none of them connected at all. But for my 2 cents, I think it's really great to connect your music somehow, and the easiest way is melodically. Have an idea come back later on in your song, in one of the later movements. And we do that here. Circles Around the Sun presents us with two iconic ideas. We have the sort of heisty string section at the beginning, and then we have the moody, mysterious, slightly doomy oriented, like I mentioned, impending doom, but without the care. It's not an antagonistic kind of doom, it's just the way things are. It's like a natural type of doom, like being in space and the uncaringness of space and how dangerous being in space is for human bodies. That's, we got to get into suits to even go out into space. So, yeah, it's sort of that uncaring danger, uncaring antagonism. That feeling in the vocal melody and harmonies and the sort of heisty fun doom, fun suspense. That's the one. That's not doom. It's suspense from the strings. They pop up in movements 3 and 5. It is very cool to hear them. 5 is pretty much a rehash of 1. We bring back a lot of the similar ideas. The vocal melody is identical. What's cool then about movement 3 is that we reincorporate that vocal melody without the vocals, and we bring down the intensity and volume, so it's more of this underlying motif. It's something that isn't quite as present. It is that same sort of uncaring doom, but it's sitting under the surface. It's harder to read, harder to recognize. I love all of that. In fact, even movements 2 and 4 can be seen as a mirror reflection of each other, as they both utilize, well, movement 2 uses the 1 beat idea, and movement 4 uses a 2 beat phrase. But the idea of having a super short, super simple, heavily repeated line for an entirety of a song with minor changes on top of it, yeah, the song as a whole is a lot of reflection, and I'm curious how much of that is purposeful. As I mentioned, if we divide the song at the break point, after movement 3, we have our first and only bit of silence. We have 21 and a half minutes on the first half and 21 minutes on the back half. It is almost perfectly split in half. If we ignore Ascension, movement 3, which I kind of feel is a wrap up slash transition, we have movement 1, which is our full sound. It's prog, it's psychedelic, it's everything. We move into our slow burn. This is a jam track. From here we move into a slow burn without the jam, and then we move back into the full sound. Ascension can even sit inside of that as a bit of like the ultimate derivative sound that sits in the middle and is the reflection point itself. On either side of Ascension is a jam, and one step further away from that is the full band sound. I'm kind of curious again if any of this is purposeful. The idea of the midpoint as a point of reflection and parallelism across the songs and the way that they're crafted and ordered, it could be coincidence, but it feels like it wasn't. As far as story narrative goes, I don't know. Circles around the sun could easily allude to celestial bodies. Not circles, but orbs, spheres. The circle is the 2D representation of that, but these orbs and spheres also make circles as they orbit the sun. Track 2 is called Ouroboros, which is a circle. Ascension, to me, we've already introduced the concept of the sun, of space. It's to go higher. Night of Pan is the one that stands out. It feels divorced from everything else, at least as the titles go. I also don't know what it is. My mind immediately goes to Pan of the Greek mythology, but I don't think I know enough about the character to recognize what a knight of his style of actions would be. So I'm a bit lost there. Musically, though, well, I kind of lost the thread in the middle. Tracks 1 and 2 I've spoken about at length tracks 1 and 5 I've spoken about at length of what I think they're kind of going for. There's a lot of doom and tension, uncertainty in the music. There's an uncaringness to parts of it. And if I recall correctly, in one of the tracks, I think it was Night of Pan, a repeated line of save me or help me or something like that. Yeah, there's tension, there's stress, something isn't right, and this person isn't in the best state of things, whether it's a mental state, an emotional state, a physical state, whatever. But I really lose the thread on movements 2, 3, and 4. They just are. I've always had this trouble getting a strong read on jam sessions because they're static in nature, so you really get the one feeling, and if I don't connect with that, I don't get a story. And I thought maybe that's the point of it, at least with Night of Pan. Maybe singularity of it all is the purpose, but again, maybe that might make more sense to me if I knew the lyrics or understand what the title was referring to. Maybe the stationariness of it would stand out more to me as a storytelling element. Let me look for some lyrics again real quick. I might rack my brain for one more topic because I know there's a lot more in here that I might have just... There is one more thing I want to talk about, but I'm going to check for lyrics real quick, and then we'll come back to that. Alright, so, I didn't find any lyrics. It was kind of frustrating too because I kept finding more of a rabbit hole to dig down, really hoping to find gold at the end of the rabbit hole. Anyways, and yeah, nothing. They do have a Bandcamp, and they do put their lyrics on Bandcamp, but this album isn't there. They do have a website. I don't know if they put the lyrics on the website, but it doesn't matter because the website hasn't been updated since 2019, one album prior to this one. They do have a forum, which I thought was awesome. It blew my mind, and I did some scrounging through there, and yeah, nobody seems to really discuss lyrics there much. So that was kind of a dead end as well. So, if anyone has the lyrics, maybe, I don't know, you have liner notes, maybe you have the CD and there's a pamphlet in it and it has the lyrics, please send them my way. Put them up on Genius or something if you have a Genius account, if you don't mind, and then send me the link. Send me, just type it up. I'll put it on Genius or something. I don't care. I want to know what's being said here because as not caught up in the middle of the song that I was with many of the meandering elements throughout Ouroboros and Night of Pan, I am sort of invested in the story. What's with the book ending of it? What's with the parallels? Why is the doom element not really present throughout the rest of the track, just at the beginning and the end? Does it have to do with the passing of years? The circles around the sun? The beginning of the year, maybe there's doom and dread. Oh, geez, another year has gone by. I'm a year older. We go through the year and it becomes more mundane. And as we approach the end of the year, oh man, another year has gone by. Is that what it's about? I don't know. I'm really curious. And I can't unlock it on my own. Even if I wanted to go back and listen to the lyrics, I tried in Circles Around the Sun Part 2, and the effects on them are just too strong for me to hear through. But as I mentioned, there are a couple of things I do want to bring up before we wrap this up. These are going to be a bit shorter. One is just the production on this is interesting. There's moments where it's exceptionally clean and others where it's just a bit more raw. They don't have a problem using heavy, extended use of compression and distortion, but they're also kind of fond of a very clean sound. We have some clean electric guitar in here. We have some straightforward piano and organ sounds. We had the strings at the beginning. There's a lot of not rock sounds in here, at least not harder rock sounds. But there's also some very meaty tones in some of our guitar work as well, and it's just really cool hearing the blend of them, especially as I mentioned, Haken. Haken has a very clinical, pristine sound to their writing, to their music. That pairs well with their writing, but tends to sort of throw me off just a little bit. I'd like just a bit more grit to it, I think. And this sort of fills that role, especially on our opening and closing movements with those very Haken-inspired vocal melodies. It is a grittier, modern prog rock at those moments, and I think that really works for me. but it is impressive where the production feels like a chameleon at places. Those moments are gritty and dirty, and others aren't. In fact, one of the sections that isn't really gritty at all is the end of Movement 2, Ouroboros. We sort of went into a jazzier idea. I thought this was cool. I say the end of Ouroboros, I kind of mean like the end half of it, the final 4 minutes of that track. It is the slow burn. We have this simple one beat idea going on underneath everything, but the jam, the melody, the solo going on top of it, it sort of meanders in a way that I've heard a lot of jazz sessions do. I brought this up earlier, but I didn't really lean into it, but even some of the melodic qualities are a bit jazzier, not really working within the typical realms of prog rock or psychedelic, kind of going more for a jazz fusion vibe, but more on the jazz and less on the rock element of jazz fusion. And I find this really interesting because I don't really think we heard anything else in here that I would attribute to being jazzy, but it's obviously clear to me that there is a jazz influence somewhere in the band. I think the more that I listen to the rhythm section ideas, especially the heavy repetition in Night of Pan, the more I can hear a jazz B section. Granted, pushed to its limits, this would be a really lengthy segment to do a solo over. You'd really have to have a soloist or a group of soloists who were down for that. A 15-minute B section would be ridiculous. But the idea is that at least in moments of those, we look at a 16-bar phrase of Night of Pan, and yeah, kind of a jazz rhythm section right there. It's interesting how they distort it and turn it into something else entirely by the end of the track, but there's that foundation present in this. And it kind of makes me want to hear more of that. I don't know if I would necessarily enjoy it. I still think that their combined sound that they have on the first and fifth movements is probably where I would find them most appealing and palatable to listen to, but I'm kind of curious just how far they could take that jazz inspiration and how inspired some of these band members are by jazz. I think that's going to wrap this up. Those are my thoughts on the N.O.X Suite by Motorpsycho, which is just such a 90s name. It's one of those, it's like a dad joke where you kind of have to groan at Motorpsycho. But like there's another part of you that's like actually it's kind of clever. Like it's bad, but it's kind of clever. And that's where it's such a 90s thing. Yeah, those are my thoughts on this track. Let me know yours down in the comments section. If you're still here after, 75 minutes, thank you. I suppose it's a lot of work putting these together, listening to it intently, organizing my thoughts and presenting them. I don't imagine a lot of people are going to be here at the end having watched everything. And as usual, I don't judge you if you skip through. Time is a valuable resource. If you watch this on 2x or if you skipped around, I'm fine with that too. Even if you didn't watch it, but then you wouldn't know that I was saying this. So, yeah, comments, thoughts, opinions, perspectives. Toss all that stuff down in the comment section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel. Uh, what's a link to the Discord server. If you want to submit your own special selection, you can find that in here as well. You can see it right there at top. Special selection submission. PayPal, Coffee, choose whichever one, whatever platform you're more comfortable with. There's instructions there. Above that, if you could, I forgot to fix this, didn't I? Like, subscribe, and ring the bell. The fact that they all go to white kills me. Oh my. The thing was, too, right before I recorded this, I was about to hit record. I was like, don't forget, Brian, you got to fix those things. And then something got my attention. I think I heard the washer buzz, so I had to go swap out the laundry, and I came back and I was like, all right, let's get into it. We got, at the time I was thinking 50 minutes of music ahead of us. No point in delaying any further, and I just hit record, and I knew it. As soon as that came up, I was like, nope, these are going still messed up. All right, I'm rambling now. This video is already long. You guys have a fantastic day. Remember, to be critical, not cynical. I've kind of really hosed this whole outro thing. So, most of you already know the stuff. I'm sure some of you repeat it with me at the end of every video, but we're not going to get that today. Here's some credits. I'll see you all next time.